Chairman, and thank you, General, for your testimony. It's very enlightening, and I know it's not easy to testify when you have options on the way forward and you're not sure the Commander-in-Chief agrees with you or not, so I think all of us appreciate your testimony. I'm going to follow up on a number of the previous questions you've been asked. First, Senator Shaheen had asked about a UN investigation possibly into the hospital accident. Does the UN usually investigate major deliberate attacks on civilians in Afghanistan when they're conducted by the Taliban?
Sure, I haven't seen that in the past. Quite frankly, I don't know.
I don't think they do typically. So do you think it would seem fair or balanced if the UN conducted an investigation which was clearly on something that was accidental, the hospital bombing, when they don't investigate deliberate Taliban killing of civilians? You think that would be viewed as fair or balanced or something the command needs or would welcome?
So I can't comment on how the UN would do that. What I can comment on, as I said up front earlier, is I have complete trust and confidence in the team that we have to be thorough, transparent, and if there are mistakes made, we'll make sure that those come out. If there's people I have to hold accountable, we'll make sure we'll do that. So I have every trust and confidence in the U.S. and the NATO investigation ongoing.
I think so too. I think most of us here do as well. And I certainly don't think an additional investigation by the UN would be warranted or welcomed by this committee. Let me ask you the issue again. This is Senator Graham, Senator Tillis's questions. You know, you're very focused on managing risks. If we go forward with the current plan, does it increase the risk that the Taliban could take over the government in 2 or 3 or 4 years out?
So again, I think we have another year and a half to continue to grow the Afghan security forces. If we went down to 1,000 around Kabul, we would not have the ability to do train advises with our.
How about would it increase the risk that the homeland would be attacked? You know, Senator Tillis has a very good and direct question that our CT capability would essentially end. Would that increase the risk that I'm just talking incrementally increase the risk that the United States of America would be attacked?
So again, when the decision was made in 2014 by President Obama on the 1,000 going to a normalized embassy, CT was not one of the variables tied into that decision.
Let me ask just on the timelines. You know, I was a lieutenant colonel in the Marines a couple of years ago. I was assigned to a OPT in Afghanistan by General Dunford. When they were looking at the force posture, our OPT was looking at the force posture that would take us from the OEF mission to the Resolute Support mission. And it was a little frustrating to be working on that because we hadn't gotten any guidance in terms of numbers from the senior military, or actually senior civilian. So you can't, you've said that you can't talk about the options, but have you actually been given a timeline by which the White House is going to respond to your options and requests? As Senator Tillis mentioned, you know, the clock's ticking. And have you either received information that you're going to be given guidance by a certain date, or have you requested a certain date by which to be given guidance, given that the clock is ticking on this very important issue?
Sure, as we lay out, as you know, then on a planning perspective, as we lay out different courses of action, we have what we call DPs, or decision points. And so in all of our courses of action, they would have a decision point on when that decision would have to be made.
And are we approaching one pretty soon?
So we would be irreversible.
Are we approaching one pretty soon?
So I know that everybody in DOD, everybody in the NSC is working very hard to take a look at these different courses of action. And as we talked about the retrograde and the time that it takes out, I think the senior leadership understands when those decision points are and when they have to get those out. And yes, sir. Let
me ask you a final question. You know, having spent some time in Afghanistan and Pakistan, I know you would probably agree with this. There's a narrative in the region that in the 1980s, we were very active there because of the Soviet invasion, and we were very helpful in terms of our assistance to people in those two different countries. And then there's a sense that in the 1990s, we, quote, abandoned the region. And I think that's a very powerful narrative. I don't know if you've seen it there, but I certainly have seen it there when I've been out in that part of the world. You mentioned, and I think it's a really important testimony today, that we are overwhelmingly welcomed, as you mentioned, by the civilian population, by the Afghan leadership. Do you think if we draw down to just an embassy force, which is kind of what we have in the rest of the world, that we would once again resurrect this idea of abandoning the region, of abandoning the people there, the governments there? And if that were the case, how do you think that would impact America's national security if in the part of the world that's really the heart of the battle against Al-Qaeda and other places, the heart of the world that, brought us 9/11, that we were viewed once again as unreliable and having abandoned the region, which is a narrative that's very powerful still in that region? What do you think that would? Do you think that narrative would be resurrected? And how do you think that would impact our national security?
So I've been tied up with Afghanistan for many years, and I think anybody in the military would tell you presence equals influence, and so the ability to continue to provide, train, advise, assist our Afghan partners to continue to improve upon their capability is what any military person would want to tell you. And again, I said that the Afghan people continue to want to have a coalition presence. They understand the impact that has for them. So, that's what they want. They'll continue to want that, I believe, unless we do something that dissuades them from that. But we've come a long way there, and a lot of this has to do with this new national unity government. And remember, they understand, different from where President Karzai was, that we've provided a lot of blood, sweat, and tears here, that many of our men and women have provided the ultimate sacrifice. We've expended a lot of money, and they want to make sure that they don't let us down here as well.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ernst.